If you had to guess, would you choose that humans act in a rational and logical manner to achieve the things they want to achieve? Or are humans irrational and emotional and oftentimes go in the direct opposite direction of what they're trying to achieve? Well, the answer and the data and the science proves the latter. And Christina is going to talk about this today, and she's going to talk about a term called behavioral leverage. So if you've ever wondered why you're not making the optimal choices, or why your team is not making the optimal choices, or life just seems a little backwards than it should as far as our actions and what we're truly seeking to achieve, she has the data and the science behind it, and you are going to love her. She is fun. Enjoy. I have the pleasure of interviewing Christina Harbridge. And as the Mischief Executive Officer and uncoach of Allegory, a behavioral leverage company, Christina partners with organizations and their leaders to amplify their ability to work with and through others. So that's a mouthful, but what she's going to share with you is based on physiology and somatic linguistics and engineered to be engaging through an interactive, entertaining approach. An Allegory course fundamentally changes leadership behavior, which leads to better outcomes through more effective communications and better cross-functional relationships. Yes, that's a mouthful. I had to practice that about 5 times.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah. But she's also, Christina has also co-authored software, built and exited a successful finance company. We're going to talk about that because it was a different way she approached that. Participated in a NASA test as a NASA test subject and collaborated to design and weld several large-scale metal sculptures. She's done a lot and she's done it all. And if that weren't enough, she's also the author of Swayed, How to Communicate for Impact. Have a copy right here showing the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. If not, we'll have the link for you in Spotify or Apple. And it reached #1 on Amazon. It's a great book, and it's right to the point. I think you'll really enjoy it. So with all of that said, Christina, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
So much for having me, Roger. I am so impressed that you read the books of the authors that you have on. That is like much respect for you for that.
Thank you. I used to pride myself on reading between 50 and 60 books a year, and that's gone up to almost 100 because of these podcasts. And but I tell you, if you don't watch TV, if you substitute for TV, it's crazy how much time you'll have. So and I'm learning so much more and getting exposed to so much more. But it's been fun. It's been fun. Well, let's do this. If we could, before we dive in and talk about Allegory and your practice and kind of that mouthful of an intro that I read, can you talk a little bit about your background and just, it's always interesting to hear how, a person's path is formed and the choices we make. So, you don't have to start from, I was born here and then as a child, but just give us a background so that we can understand what makes you tick.
All right, let's commence awkwardness. Is there a button for that? The most awkward thing is me talking about myself. It's interesting. My path has been, like many others, unplanned. Mm-hmm. And have you ever noticed that humans are irrational and emotional?
I think those are the first words. That's one of my questions. That's the first sentence in your book, I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think my path has been about trying to come up with a quadratic formula that made humans feel more rational. And so I don't want to start with where I grew up, but this all really began in the back of like an old, I think it was a Plymouth Fury, sitting on the ground looking at my Aunt Rosemary's boots on the way to be a daffodil in a school play. And I was a special ed student who had a stutter and a stammer, so I couldn't talk. Who thought they were going to put a kid up on a stage who couldn't talk? I don't know why. Roger, I was freaked out, vomiting, having a panic attack. I didn't have words for it, but she had on these white go-go boots with turquoise leather behind them, and it had cutouts. And I started like looking at them and making up stories and stuff about them, and I wasn't nervous anymore. And I was a little kid, and I realized, wait a minute. When I get out of my head, I'm not nervous. When I get out of my head, my stutter is calm. And people tease me for this, but that began a life spent getting out of my head and noticing people. And started, my whole career has been about that. And so whatever company I started, the goal was, what's the outcome we're trying to get to, and how do we get out of our head and see reality and undo all the habits that people are doing that's messing with the outcome that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
And so it really began in the back of a freaking car with the hippie auntie.
I love the level of detail in which you can recall that story. Like, that's the impression that it left on you this many years later. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's talk about that, because I'm just going to skip around here because let's get going. The very first sentence, there's an intro, and then your first chapter, one says, I'll quote it so I don't get it wrong, but it starts out with, humans are irrational and emotional. And then, like, the next, for the first chapter is, we do not always behave in ways that move us closer to what we want.
Yeah.
So talk about that as a philosophy, and now as what you've studied for so long.
Yeah. So when you spend a lot of time outside of your head, there's so much reality that isn't inferred that we can see, where we're often being taught things that don't create what we really want. Like, the tool or the habit isn't matching what we really want. And the thing I want to say, if I didn't put it in the book, is the fact that we're irrational and emotional is delicious. It's a feature, not a bug. Yeah. And so as a founder, I kept getting coached to control all that. And that is missing on the magic of what makes humans human, which is being irrational and emotional.
Yeah. Speak to that more. As a founder, you were being coached to sidestep that, so to speak. Double click on that. Speak more to that if you could.
Let me try to do that. I'm still in my awkward phase. It'll take me about 5 minutes to get out of my awkwardness.
You're great.
So an example would be, as a founder, I hired all these education and training companies to teach me how to coach people, to help people perform in the system that we were in. So people would give me a feedback process. They would say, okay, when you need to give someone feedback, tell them what they did well, and then tell them how they suck. And they coached me on how to do that. And I was over my skis as an entrepreneur. So I just had no idea what I was doing. My company had grown too fast. I didn't know what I was doing. So I would sit down with people and I would tell them what they liked, but then I'd watch them completely shut down. They would shut down and brace and completely not feel the appreciation I was giving. Nor then they would defend the feedback I was giving, because the system that we're being taught, everyone knows the freaking system. So Roger, when I give you love as a human, your body is ready for the hit. Your body is ready for it. Your physiology is no longer open because you know what's coming, because I'm doing a task or a habit that isn't aligned with the outcome. The purpose of feedback is feedback has to be welcomed. If it's not welcomed feedback, it's not working. And so that is an example of a tool that doesn't actually work, but we all do it because it makes us comfortable. So feedback becomes a task rather than an outcome.
Yeah. There's something called a damning admission that I found so powerful, where you put all the bad stuff before the word but, because all people are waiting for is the word but. And so if you say, hey, this program is going to be expensive, it's going to be really hard, you're going to have to work more than you've ever done, but it's going to be incredibly rewarding, you're going to have this benefit. All they hear are the benefits versus the thing, because we are so trained to listen, well, I'm just waiting for the but, because after the but's when the real stuff happens. And
well, from a physiological point of view, there's something called afference that's going on in what you just did. And so is this interesting? I can dive into this a little bit.
Go for it. Okay,
so as humans, we keep being taught IQ and EQ, which is skill. Can I say that sentence? Emotional literacy. Can I say it in a way that doesn't make a person feel small? But what's driving listening is afference. It's that person's physiology, how their body is accepting the sentence. And so when we put the challenges up front, it changes the way a body receives the information. And let me give you an example. If I am trying to sell something to you, Roger, and I only tell you the good stuff, it is your body's job to be skeptical. If you are only being told the good stuff in a sales thing, I have now made it transactional where your body now has to discount or be skeptical because you're being flooded with all the benefits. That is a physiology that makes that buyer a little bit irrational. But it's the salesperson that put them in that physiology in the first place.
Yeah.
I have asked you to be a skeptic. So your sentence flips that. I'm putting the challenges up front. That means your body is there to try to collaborate and fix those challenges. It's a physiology thing, not an intellect or an emotion thing.
Wow. All right. So then let's get into behavioral leverage. It's one of the terms that you've kind of coined and that you employ, and that the practice you employ. Talk about it, exactly what it is and how can the listeners actually use it.
So how do I talk about it exactly? So human behavior is a series of factors, and I don't have time to dig into the nerd of it. One is the system. Systems drive behavior more than individual choices. So the listeners can think, is the system I'm using or the system we have creating the behaviors we want? Are we leveraging behavior, or are we requiring people to expend cognitive load and willpower? And so an example would be how we bonus people is a system. So in my first company, we bonused on thank you cards because that would make people drive a set of behaviors that matched more what we were trying to do. And so behavioral leverage, a big piece of it is, are the systems driving the behavior we want? And in every organization I've ever been in, the answer is no. It is not. The meetings are not set up to bring out talent. The meetings are set up as a task, not an outcome. The systems, the ways that people work together are not. I used to do system design. These systems aren't set up to bring out the best in people. They're often set up in one person's physiology, the way one person works. So that's one piece of it. System design, it's huge. It's what a lot of us are missing. The second piece of it is the habit that I'm doing, reaching the audience I'm trying to reach. So the outcome and the audience. So if I have a position of power over you, Roger, is the way I'm giving feedback getting you to welcome it and know what to do? Or is the way I'm giving feedback shutting you down and making you feel compliant rather than committed? And so it's an individual understanding that not everybody listens the way we talk. And are we able to translate what we're doing so that person can use it? So a short answer would be user-friendly system design and conversations. That's like the fastest way to say it. User-focused, not what I said focused.
Really, and you speak a lot about this in your write a lot about this in your book. It's so focused on how is my message being received, and how are they interpreting what I'm saying, versus this is what I meant or this is what I'm trying to achieve. Will you open up that a little bit, because that's what I got from your book as I read it. Is you need to look, and you have this Granny Smith, visual, Granny Smith apple, and somebody describing that, and by the time, like the telephone game, by the time it gets out to the sixth iteration or whatever, people have no idea what you're even, it's about sustenance versus this Granny Smith apple with a worm in it. Using that principle, if you can, for people that haven't read your book, explain what you're driving at there.
Okay. Is it too soon in our relationship to say I love you? You're making my brain think. So it probably is. Whatever. Let's stay weird. So here's the thing. In this thing of behavioral leverage, so often people focus on, how do I get this person to listen so they can do user-friendly communication? So let me get out of my head and notice what makes this person listen and translate it. That works when we're open and we're not physiologically hijacked. Okay. When we're in a state of curiosity. But many of us have heard the quote, get comfortable with discomfort. And we live that so much that we are jacking with our ability to translate. And let me explain why. If when we get uncomfortable, how we soothe our discomfort is a problem. So it's not that we're uncomfortable, it's that I am soothing my discomfort with a soothing mechanism that's messing with what I really want. So an example would be, if I want to try to get you to listen, you're a team member who works with me, and I've got a whole meeting full of people, and I'm frustrated and I get uncomfortable. A common way entrepreneurs soothe that discomfort is broad sweeping statements. We use buzzwords. We say things to a room to try to get everybody all focused, and it does the opposite. So a common one with founders, where's my people? I've done this. We look at a room and say, we need to increase velocity. What did I just call that room, Roger? What did I just call them?
Lazy, slow.
Slow. So is their physiology open or closed now?
They're closed, sure.
Now, the people who do velocity are annoyed with us now, so they're more in compliance mode. The people that we're talking to didn't hear it because they're like, you're just a whack job founder. You need to slow your ass down. Sorry. Yeah. They're like, they can't, we didn't do anything, but we feel like now we told them and everyone's going to walk faster after the meeting. But no communication happened. And so as a founder, the first thing I got to do, behavioral leverage, is I got to check my attitude. I got to check what's going on. Am I frustrated? Am I coming from a place of annoyance that's going to make me soothe my discomfort in ways that messes with what I really want? No one's going to increase velocity by us saying it that way.
So then how, for us founders and business owners or just leaders within a company, you do need to get a team oftentimes to produce more than they are producing.
Yeah.
So how can we actually apply what you just said, and don't walk in a room and say, damn it, I need more velocity? Because people that are already working hard are going to say, dude, I am working hard. And the people that aren't, like you said, won't hear you, won't change their behavior. What is a much better way to approach that same situation? I need more work and results out of this team.
In the nuance of the situation, what are the set of behaviors and actions we want them to do that they can find themselves in? So an example would be, if I'm a tech founder who has expertise as an engineer and I need the velocity, or the board's going to step in and start messing with us, I might stand and say, listen, we can ship 3 weeks early with these 2 deliberate trade-offs. Everybody get into groups of 3s and break it. Why won't that work? So it's getting them into a more visceral nuance that then they're enrolled. So it's kind of like the sales thing I said to you. We put team members in a position of resistance instead of a position of collaboration. So we can ship 3 weeks early. Here's 2 deliberate trade. Get into groups and break it. Why won't it work? When you tell people break it, why won't it work? People start solving for it. Yeah. They start figuring out how it will work. But if you say, it'll work, it's great, soft shoe dance, come on, do it. Their job is to fight us. And then they'll have the meeting after the meeting.
Sure, of course.
So Roger, short answer, stop taking crap offline. Stop saying, let's take it offline. Conflict is the most powerful way to enroll people in a vision. Conflict is how we accelerate our movement, but a lot of us don't. We push it away. Take it offline.
One of our company mantras here in my businesses is, and I learned this from a business partner, is rush to conflict. Rush to conflict. So would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, be wrong sooner. It's our job to be wrong sooner. That's our job as a founder.
In Simon Sinek's book, who I start with the why, love him, love his stuff. He includes your methods to transform a confrontation into a conversation to improve the outcome. Can you talk to me and talk to the audience about what that looks like? And further, again, how can the audience implement that? So how do you take a confrontation into a conversation, which is what you were just talking about, but maybe go one level deeper on that?
Yes, Simon Sinek. It's so funny. I tease him on every podcast I'm in. I told him he couldn't put me in my book. That one freaking page in his book. I get 3 calls a week. Because I don't want to be famous. I like being under the radar. And I'm like, dang, he's popular. So he owes me a drink for you mentioning it. He owes me like a vineyard by now. But he is so popular. I get 3 calls a week from that page.
Yeah.
So the goal of it's kind of staying, can I stay loyal to the outcome and act in my values in this conversation? So can I be more focused on what we really want? And that's not a goal. An outcome is like just moving things forward. Or am I letting my body drive my behavior in a moment? So an easy way to explain it is my outcome aligned with the set of behaviors that need to happen next? So let's take a collection agency, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If a person's number one goal is to collect the money, they're going to act in a way that shuts down dialogue with the person and create an adversarial relationship. But if they change what they're optimizing for and think, my goal is to establish an enough relationship so this person tells me the truth, then I can help them. Their set of behaviors is going to be different. So if a founder wants to implement keeping things a conversation, sometimes we just want to say a sentence and walk away. But if we're trying to get a conversation, what are we, is our sentence getting that person talking more? Is how we're starting. It's really having a good rigor practice. Is what I'm doing getting this person to talk more? Am I getting more information, or is what I'm doing shutting them down? And what a lot of us founders do is that person just won't talk. The second strategy is always changing people. First strategy is, what can I do different to get them to talk?
This would be a perfect time to segue into, you started and founded a debt collection agency. And debt collection, has this, instantly it comes to mind as a high pressure person on the phone, scaring an elderly person, like all those misconceptions. Well, some of them are there's some reason behind it, but it, like selling used cars, which is a very valuable service that the economy needs, but it got a bad rap, and debt collection has kind of been there. And you went at it in a completely opposite approach.
Yeah.
And we're very, very successful. Talk about that.
Yeah. I just want to start by honoring the people that were on the phone. And so I had never done that job. And the humans that were on that phone, I would watch them in some of the hardest conversations. When people are owed money or when their credit's been impacted, they're freaked out. And so people would call in screaming and yelling. And I had taken a job at a collection agency. I worked in the office to take care of my dad and go to college. And I just remember the nicest people I've ever met in the break room. And then they were like being mean on the phone. And I just, as somebody who's out of my head all the time, I'm like, this isn't okay. And so when I started it, I believed we'd collect less, but I thought it was just a more humane way to change this conversations, because millions of calls are happening every day and contributing to unhappiness in the world. I was surprised that by being nice, we collected 3 times more. And people always talk about, oh my gosh, you were a visionary. No, I wasn't. I was just freaking trying to feed my family. Like, it was all just, I just tried to figure it out. But I would see that some people were so good when someone was yelling at them, they didn't brace. They weren't thrown off by human suffering. They had empathy. Like, their body was so empathetic. And that's where a lot of this material came from, is my team would let me hook them up to physiological things to see it was their body, their operating system just connected with humanity different than mine did. I was being competitive in that call. They were being like, say more, what's happening? And every time we would see that person go from yelling to feeling understood. And that's why they would invite us to their weddings, because they were getting a feeling they weren't getting anywhere else. And so that whole story, a lot of people ask me about it. We kind of iterated and made it up as we went along, because it worked. I mean, it really worked.
So Christina, you found that certain people would not have a physiological or a different physiological response to a stimulus of anger, yelling, whatever it was. And you could correlate that to a person that was more successful in collecting past due. How then would you hire for that? You can't hook them up to biomedical equipment during the interview. So how do you hire for that?
The reason I asked to be a test subject at NASA is because I noticed it was just physiology and that we could teach people to have that physiology. So that's what Allegory is all about, teaching leaders to have the physiology that doesn't react to people negatively. So instead of getting comfortable with discomfort, it's get curious in discomfort, train your body that. But what we started doing is we changed how we trained. We changed all of our systems in our business. But then we also, in our hiring, we have a really weird hiring process. We don't do one-on-one interviews. We do behavioral interviewing where 14 people come in together. We sit them around a table. We talk about the thing, and then we have them do something together in groups of 3 or 4. And then we watch them behaviorally. So it's a whole, I should write a book about this because it's a whole set of practices that then our team is watching people and we know the behaviors that will make that person successful in the role. And so is it natural to them? So often people are put in roles that it takes too much willpower for them to do the behavior that's required. And I can give you a quick example if you want.
Sure.
So when we were hiring for someone to be, our office manager, I asked if anybody wanted water at the table. And some people said yes. She got up and helped me. She got up and helped me serve everyone water. That is natural to her. That it is, so being of service to someone is her jam. And then there were 5 other exercises that she stood out above everybody else. She loved being of service to people. Now, other people were good at the interview. Man, they sounded great. But behavioral leverage is, are we using their innate talent? And so behavioral interviewing is so important. So it's easy for people to deploy. So we hired the collectors that were interested in humanity. They wanted to hear people's stories. They wanted to give people options, but that came out in their behavior and not in their words and how they acted around people.
Hey everyone, as you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. I did this is going way back. This is 25, 27, 28 years ago. It was a management development course at a company, a pharmaceutical company I was working for. And a video camera was on you for all 48 hours, for all 2 days that you were in, so it was pretty high stress, but it was a lot of that same thing where here's a situation, you're in a group, throw it in, here's the limited amount of instructions, and then see really who gets frustrated versus who will, let's solve for X. What are we missing here? What can we do? And highly effective. I mean, it's a rigorous process to run if you're the employer and you're the hiring employer. But I can only imagine the data that comes out of something like that is so much more valid than even a competency selection interview, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm a huge fan of behavioral interviewing, but it's still words, right? It's still words versus actually watching the behavior.
And here's the thing that my next book is about is frustration is a sign of innate talent. So when someone is frustrated, it's 50% of the time it's because they have a talent that they take for granted. It's something that comes easy to them. So when we've taught people how to do this interviewing, people get distracted by how that person soothes discomfort rather than noticing what they get frustrated by. And so a lot of people aren't hired because the way they soothe that frustration makes them seem like they're not solutions focused. When in fact, ignore the soothing mechanism. What they're frustrated by is exactly what we need in that role. Because many of us have been taught to just get over it, we don't know how to double click on our frustration. And so a lot of people aren't hired. They're said that, they're not solutions oriented. That's not what's happening. They're soothing their frustration in a way that is messing with what they really want. And people can be taught not to do that.
And when you say soothing, maybe it's an emotional response. So something that comes easy if whatever, I can't think of an example, but you do something at work and it's so easy for you, and when someone else doesn't do it or can't do it, you get frustrated. I guess I'm trying to figure out
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with that. If you can figure out exactly what I'm saying, you're freaking brilliant. So people always come to me and they said, I want the 3 easy steps. And I'm like, I have no interest in 3 easy steps. I want 15 really complicated ones that are based on rigor, that require me to stop being irrational when it comes to humans. Like, this is challenging. Peopling is hard. And so to help you get a little in the zip code of understanding this complication that I'm vomiting here, it's soothing mechanisms. The word soothing mechanisms makes people think emotions. Let's remove emotions. We are not, unless you have a comma after a name, no founder should be psychoanalyzing people. It's a waste of time. What is the observable behavior that they're doing, and does it get them closer to what they really want? So an example would be distancing, Roger. One of the things that a lot of founders do when we get uncomfortable is we distance. And I don't want to go on too long, but a really good example of that, in front of 600 mostly men in an audience, I told them that they're soothing discomfort in ways that's messing with their outcomes. They start heckling me, which is affection. Heckling is a soothing mechanism of discomfort. Yeah. They're heckling me. I'm a Marine. I'm this. I'm that. You can't, like, just going after me. I have 7 older brothers. Love it. Love language. And I said, all right, everybody stand up. I can get you to soothe discomfort in less than a minute. Is everybody in? And they're all, we're so resilient. And I had everybody stand up. And I typed on a slide what I was going to make them do. And I said, I'll show you the slide after. If I can get you to do it, maybe I can't. And for the next minute, I described my period in absolute painstaking detail. I'm on my period. I'm cramping. It's the clotty kind. I just sneezed, and it's like a scene from Psycho. 90% of the dudes took a step away from me. They stepped back physically. And I put up on the slide, distancing, you just did it. I own your ass right now. I own you. I've just made you respond in discomfort by distancing. And everyone laughed. It was hilarious. Yeah, and I said, let's talk about how this shows up. I'm not asking for a show of hands, but how many of you, if your kid comes to you freaked out because the world has gotten too big for them, they don't know how to manage it, they're 9, how many of you send that kid to their room? Now, I'm not judging you sending them to the room, but you're teaching them, don't come to me when you're upset. Go to your friends. Go to your video game. Go online. Don't come to me because I can't handle it. Is that aligned with your outcome? Do you want your kids going to their friends, or do you want them coming to you? And we had dudes crying. They're like, holy crap. That is an example of a soothing mechanism. Now, one of my teams said I have to call it a blip, or something that doesn't get people feeling like it's from a wound. But it is like, we all do it unless you're a sociopath.
Yeah.
Distancing, sending my child to a room strategically is different than what I've done. Get away from me. I can't handle your business right now. And we wonder why teenagers stay in their room when the world's hard for them. We've taught them that. We've taught them.
Yeah. Wow. I'll be thinking on that for a while. That's that. Thank you for that gift. Can
I just close the story with one thing Please. That is on my heart? After that, I had this beautiful human being, this man, come up to me, grab my hands. He's like, I hated you the first 10 minutes you spoke. Like, I had such a visceral response to you. I wanted to leave, and my friend made me leave. And I realized that I was soothing. I was just soothing my discomfort. He said, but my wife passed, and I won't let my daughter talk to me about her period. I just realized that my kid doesn't have someone, and you have opened my eyes that there's this, all I want is for her to be close to me, and I'm not letting her be close to me. And he went home and just like shifted that whole thing. It was his discomfort or being silly, but it's really how we soothe our discomfort is often at odds with what we really want.
Yeah.
And he said I could share that as long as I didn't say his name.
Sure. I'm grateful that you shared that. That's going to help people. I so strongly believe, and I've talked about in this podcast, about the wings of a butterfly, the ripple effect, the wake we leave. And what I hear in that story is you on stage impacted a man who then went home, had a different interaction, and hopefully future different, more positive relationship with his daughter, which is setting up her to have a more positive relationship with a man in her life in the future. And like from something you said on stage, like she'll walk down the aisle someday with a man that probably will respect her, and they'll be able to openly talk about things that she wouldn't have been able to talk about because of something you said on stage. And I hope that people listening to this understand that's why leadership is so monumentally important. We're obviously, we're not going political here, but we're so obviously missing that in our world right now, where there's strong leadership, because the ripple effect, the wake that a leader leaves goes on forever, and it pays off again and again and again and again and again when done well. And unfortunately, when not done well, there's massive unhealthy consequences to it. And as leaders, we all need to get better.
And Roger, a leader can be incredible 95% of the time. But it's when we soothe our discomfort, that 5%, that's what causes teams to get compliant rather than committed. We keep spending time on the 95. Let me be more visionary. Maybe we've all, including myself, got to get really focused, not on psychology. What is the behavior I'm doing when I'm uncomfortable that is messing with what I truly want? And we discount it. We're like, oh, I only did that once. They still talk about it. When our physiology gets uncomfortable, it sticks. We remember what's most vivid.
Yeah.
And so that kid that keeps being sent to their room, that is bigger than all the times we threw the ball with them.
Yeah.
And so let me say one last thing. And gosh,
yeah.
I feel like you need to have a stop sign to get me to stop.
No, my gosh, this is
tangents. The reason our world is so messed up right now, one factor is because a soothing mechanism of discomfort behaviorally is us and them. We do this to create belonging. It comes from a gorgeous place where when I'm uncomfortable, I soothe my discomfort by getting connected with a group of people. This gives me serotonin. This is an addiction. So I'm engineering, not product. So this is why in organizations, engineering against product, marketing against engineering, the C-suite against the directors, like us and them, Republican, Democrat, like we can go in. This is a biological response to discomfort. And every leader listening to this has got to do behavioral things to reduce us and them. Every single organization, because engineering and product should be frustrated with each other. Their talent is different. And it's a leader's job to never let us and them happen, but we do it with the way we talk. Oh, that's just engineering. Oh, that's just Bob.
Yep. And that one comment can usurp months of great work. That one comment. I call those snipes. And even when they're not malicious or on purpose, those snipes are so much more powerful than all of the positive things that you can string together, because it cuts the legs out from underneath it. You talk in Suede about we talk a lot of stuff, but a few things really stuck out. And you talked about there's no right way to influence, but there's always another way. And I sat with that statement for a little bit, and obviously enough to write it down as a question to you. Expand upon that. I really want to understand that. There's no right way to influence, but there is always another way.
Like myself, maybe, I think we all want the quadratic formula. Just tell me what to do and I'll freaking do it. Tell me the thing that's going to work and I'll do it. Just, tell me to start with Y. Great. I start with Y. Start with Y stops working when everybody gets the system. So I started teaching storytelling 30 years ago. It was amazing. Not now. Now capitalism has gotten a hold of storytelling, and it doesn't have the same impact, because now leaders are being taught to tell their personal story. It's too late for that, y'all. That's a tactic that isn't reaching people the way it did 15 years ago when it was novel. So all of us as leaders have got to stop focusing on what we're doing. We have to focus on how is it being received. So good example. My team's just entitled. Total freaking waste of time. That is calling the team a name. I've just labeled my team. That is a soothing mechanism for discomfort. Rather than call them entitled, get out of your head and be like, when I said that didn't get the action I wanted. How do they listen? Let me get out of my head and pay attention. There's another way to influence them. That personal story about working hard so they would work hard wasn't it. That didn't work. What's another way? What makes them come alive? And too many of us are looking for a tool. It's like cheap and easy. Give me the tool instead of doing the rigor with this set of people. What makes them spark? How with this team do I get out of my head and watch them and love them and figure out how to move them? There's always another way.
So I'm Gen X and I manage mostly millennials and Gen Z, mostly Gen Z. And actually I have a great affinity for them because I think they get a lot of things right that Gen X got wrong. And I think we can help them along the way too. So there's, it's symbiotic. But so let's say Gen X managing Gen Z. What is a way then a leader could start fresh today and say, I'm going to approach this in a different way? So saying, hey, you're lucky to have a job. That's the way we grew up, and you need to work hard and put in your time. And it's all about grinding, and then you'll get the money, and then the money gets you power, and the power, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff we were sold, in Gen X. What's a great, so maybe even a new leader taking over this team of Gen Z, how do you go about it? Like make what you just said tangible and real.
Okay, I'll give you a couple things to do, but y'all aren't going to want to do it.
Sure.
Here's the thing. We want everyone to function the way we did. And so we're so irrational. We're like, if I just tell them to work harder, they'll work hard. And it hasn't worked so far. And as long as we're letting our frustration eclipse the nuance of the team that we have, we're not ever really going to be a good leader for that team because we're not in the nuance. The first thing we got to do for everybody listening right now, for 2 weeks, get out of your dang head. Look for what you like. Look for the beauty of the team. When you're on Zooms with them, instead of like, oh, I wish they would turn on their freaking video, start paying attention to when they turn on their video. What do you like about this? What do they do? What are they doing that really works for them? Make notes of everything that you see behaviorally that this team loves. When do they open up? What do they do? So that's the second thing. First thing is data collection. Second thing is get out of buzzwords and get into the nuance. Get more focused on the nuance, what this team is facing, what they're doing. The more we can get out of the entitlement and into the behavior, then we can know what brings out this team's best. It isn't how I learned. It isn't how I am. And now physiology is a piece of this because a lot of founders are driven by dopamine, and we have to hire people that are driven by acetylcholine, like they're more process oriented. So a lot of this is the people we hire don't learn the way we learn, but we keep teaching them the way they learn. And I can give you an example if that's helpful.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. So executive team, I'm in a fly on a wall in an executive team, and they're, oh God, this team is so entitled. Like they're just like complaining. And a complaint means a person stands for something. So when someone's complaining, they're standing for something, but they're at the buzzword level. It's a waste of time. It's creating us and them in the organization. So as a founder, the more I let my team, tear down the team of now creating us and them. And that is not going to help me get what I want to get. So I stood up and said, hey, what's an example? What's an example of this entitlement? Let me hear 3. Give me 3 examples of it. And one of them goes, we gave them food. We spent a big part of our budget to give everybody food, and they're all complaining about it. It's not hot. We should have this. They want like from a province in Russia. They want food, and everybody's getting really upset. And I said, all right, so hold on just a second. Talk to me how you rolled this out. How did you roll out the lunch? And a guy said, oh, we had this deck about how great it was going to be. Like, we're giving you food. We're doing this because we care about you. We want to hear your feedback. Give us feedback. And I said, okay, let's unpack what y'all did. You promised them it would be amazing. You set their expectations very high. So they want the province in Russia because you sold them on it being great. Second, you told them you did this because you care about them. It was a gift. Bullshit. That is not why you did it. You basically lied to them. So you said it was greater than it was. You lied to them on why you were doing it. And then you asked them for feedback, which they're giving you. And now you're mad at them. You're mad at them for doing exactly what you set up. I think I got fired that day. This is what I'm talking about. Most of us don't want to look at the rigor. And I said, here's how it could have gone. Hey, y'all, we're testing something. It's a pilot. We've heard from y'all that we're a food desert and we want you at your desk more. Like, frankly, we just want to spend more time together. We think the more we spend time together and eat, like there's business reasons for this that we're doing, but we're going to try this pilot. We're going to try it for 3 months. We're going to bring in some food. We're going to have to limit, we're going to have a vegan option, sandwiches, and then one warm option. We're going to try to, so if you have ideas that can fit in the budget, you can give us some of your ideas on how we can make this work. Because with our board, we can't spend more than we're spending, but we would love to hear ideas on how to make this work. I said, that is more nuanced. That is focused on truth. And that gets the team working to make it happen. Over-promising is the curse of a founder. It is our curse. We over-promise.
I think it's because we have so much passion for what we believe it can become. You are in sales mode most of the time. You're selling your ideas most of the time, but that's a vapid way to build a team. Yeah.
And I'm going to tear up when I say this. So many of us, Roger, have been taught that fake is a strategy. We have been taught the tools we receive. Storytelling now is a freaking tool and it's killing me. I named my company Allegory because my whole life has been about storytelling. But now we're doing it. We're using it. It's like a tactic and we've been taught fake as a strategy. So that executive team, God love them, they were doing what they thought they were supposed to do, get everybody excited about it. But just like the sales call you said at the beginning, it's not true. It's fake. And then we get mad at people for playing the role we put them in. We put them in that role. They're not entitled.
Well said. You have given tons of value because I'm already thinking about this. Usually I'll wait till after the podcast and I start digesting it, but I'm in my own head. I know you said we have to get out of our own head, but now I'm in my own head after all the value and the nuggets you've dropped.
Oh, you're sweet.
So I've got a few final questions for you, and then certainly I want people to find out how they can follow you and connect with you. People know I'm an avid reader. I love reading books. We talked about, read your book, and I'm probably reading 100 a year now, just to keep up. But I love it. So, and boy, I had someone on here that said, the right book at the right time can change someone's life, and I feel that more today than ever. Is there a book that you can recommend, and you can't pick your own because that's cheating, but is there a book that you can recommend that people you think would read based on what you were talking about today, could pick up and read, and when they set it down, it would change them forever? Yeah.
Yes. They're not going to read it past the first 4 pages, though. So a lot of founders, many of us, like that guy that said, I almost left, but my friend wouldn't let me. We distance. It's something that we do. When we experience discomfort or something we don't agree with, one of the reasons I really respect you is I watched a podcast you did about environmental stuff. And I love that you're digging into what you don't agree with. That's very rare. Many of us go into what we already agree. So this book will have it has had a profound impact on my life and the life of every founder that I've forced to read it. So Tricia Hersey, it is Rest is Resistance.
Rest is Resistance. Okay.
And she uses historical facts to guide people through the impact that our systems have on bodies. And I'm using performance, which is a founder word, She comes at it as social justice. And it is the most, I think it should be required reading for anyone working in capitalism to understand why a group of executives calls a team entitled. So we often think employees against employer, we're in the same mess.
Yep.
We are not us and them, we're in the same mess. And when founders start reading books like this, it will have a profound impact on how they manage themselves and get us out of us and them.
Yeah. I'm going to put that, we'll put that in the show notes because that one sounds really like I'm going to pick it up. That sounds like something people, especially if you're starting a business, in a business, even exiting a business, like you need to read that to help your team. I love it. Thank you. I've never heard of that one before. Thank you.
And every leader I've had read it is angry with me. Text me this sentence. What the hell? I'm like, yeah, keep reading. Yeah. Keep reading. Pressure is clarifying. Like, keep reading. And the texts that I get from people, like understanding that the behavioral leverage is system design. It gets that founder realizing the systems in my business are not humane. They can be done in a way that I will get the quadruple bottom line. It improves income. It improves everything when we see it that way.
Yeah. You and I share a colleague, Rand Stagen, and my favorite saying of his is leaders get the organization they deserve.
That part. Yep.
And now I've taken it to entrepreneurs. You have the business you deserve. Like, you deserve it. That's whatever. If it's great, that you deserve that. If it's not, you deserve that. And it's that ownership and just full accountability. It's actually very freeing, very, very freeing.
Can I add to it? Is that cool?
Please.
Here's one that'll make that I should probably do an article on this. And add to that, one of the reasons why that's so challenging to manifest is that resilience is a problem. Our resilience is what's getting in the way of creating an organization we deserve. We've been taught to be resilient when there's something else for us to tap into that makes that organization thrive. It isn't bracing faster, harder. It's something else.
So instead of run through that wall, go find the door that you can just open up to walk through. But
100%. And Tom Batchelder said you get more of what you tolerate. And so many of us are resilient, so we're tolerating rather than redesigning systems in a way that gets us more of what we want.
Yeah. Gold, pure gold. All right, couple last questions. This one's a little different. So fast forward to the end of your life, and you've had this awesome life and this wonderful, very full life. But we're at your funeral, and a loved one can only, reading your eulogy, can only use they're only allowed to pick 3 descriptors, 3 words that would describe the life that you lived. And the reason I ask this question is I'm always curious to know of my guests, what is the life you're striving for? Because these 3 words that they would choose is hopefully what you're living every day, or the values you're living every day, or the way that you're showing up in the world. But they can only pick 3. No, they don't have to be consecutive, but just like 3 descriptors that you would hope they would use when describing you and the life you lived.
Remember when I said I loved you? That's gone now. I no longer love you.
You cashed that chip, Roger.
It's gone. It's over. They would say, I felt loved. That's what I want them to say.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I think that's true with any human I'm around. Just want people to feel loved for who they are.
That's great, Christina. All right. Second to last question before we find out how we can get a hold of you. If you had a magic wand, and this was fun. I'm going to hand you a magic wand, and you can wave that sucker tonight and make one change to the world so that when we wake up tomorrow, the world is different according to Christina. How? What one way would we wake up tomorrow and the world is just different in one material way?
I have 2. I'm not allowed to say 2.
You can say both.
I can say both. First one that came to my heart is there are 600,000 foster kids in this country that don't have homes. And I don't want charitable organizations, y'all. I don't want to have a charitable organization solve that. I want our systems to not produce that. So in my retirement, I think that's what I'm going to work on. These babies need a home. I don't want us to have 600,000 foster kids without a home.
Yep.
So that was the first one I thought of. If I could wave a magic wand, that would do so much for this world. And then the second one, I think for the listeners, I think if every single marketer, founder, team member, influencer, politician, if we no longer had to hustle for our worthiness, if we no longer utilized fake strategies to get attention, if we just let our freaks fly and stop being transactional and just be real, I just feel there's a lot of alcoholism, psychological stuff, because we're hustling for worthiness instead of just being who we are. Like, just real is so beautiful. And we don't have to hustle or gain people to work with them. Oh, do you want to scale your coaching practice? Like, we don't have to do all this crap. You just be real with each other.
Yeah.
I think that would be a game changer for all of us.
Well, the last question, which is the most important question, is how can people, you've shared such great wisdom and just the way you say things have made me think. I'm sure the listeners are still chewing on some of it. How can people follow you, contact you, be part of your journey?
So you'll notice I don't hustle for followers. So I'm kind of not a big social media person, because I prefer like 500 really deep connections than 5,000. But I do like to post things to try to help people, and I love interacting. So Christina Harbridge is my on all the things. There's not very many of us, and not many with purple hair. So you can follow me there. I love creating material from questions. So I do encourage people on ChristinaHarbridge.com. You can go to my website and ask me questions. I freaking love that, because I create content, especially pushback. And, I sold my, Allegory Inc. was a facilitator coaching practice that I sold a big part of it a couple years ago. So I'm not scaling a coaching practice, but I'm happy to talk to anybody to help them. If it's a really good fit, I still do a little bit of that work where I'm helping executive teams or whatever, or help them find the right people to help them with.
And just your first last name.com, because we'll put that in the show notes as well. Okay, great.
And allegoryinc.com. And then I'm just going to plug that I do have a book called Afferents coming out soon. So if folks want to know when that's out, they can just let me know and I'll ping them when it's ready. It's on how physiology is driving behavior before facts and feelings.
That's cool. That's cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Thank you so much. You're special. I really appreciate you.
Make me cry. Thank you so much. I appreciate the way that you go at this. It feels like a conversation rather than a interview.
Good. That's the goal. That's the goal. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.